So today we're going to talk about a very important data cleansing technique when dealing with textual data, and that is spell checking. So PolyAnalyst has a built-in spell checking system through the spell check node, which we can just use by dragging and dropping, selecting, and then we'll need to give the text that we'd like to spell check. So in this instance, we have three different columns. We want to apply this spell checking system to the summary column. All right, and then we can go ahead and execute. And the spell check node has a combination of automatic and manual systems. So when we just run the spell checking node, the automatic systems will be applied, and PolyAnalyst will go through the document and it'll find misspelled words and it will have replacements suggested. And so when you open up the spell check node after it's been executed, this is the manual that you'll see. So we have in the left-hand column a list of our misspelled words. Next to it, we'll have the suggested replacements. And then we'll have a measure called confidence, along with the support and frequency for the different words that we found misspelled. So what this confidence means is basically how sure PolyAnalyst is that the word that we found was a mistake and that the replacement that we suggest is the correct replacement. This is algorithmically determined. And it is, when we display this information, it is sorted with the highest confidence first. So how can PolyAnalyst be 100% confident in these series of words? And that has to do with the algorithm that we're going to be using to suggest these replacements. So the algorithm has two stages. The first is basically just uses a cheat sheet. PolyAnalyst comes with a built-in dictionary called a spell check dictionary that contains a large list of commonly misspelled words. So things like approx as an abbreviation for approximately, at the, or missing the space because is missing a letter, or it has the letters inverted. All these cases are just very commonly seen in text, and so we can go ahead and just have a big list of all these things to look for, and if we see them, we should just automatically replace them with the correct version. So that's why our confidence for these is 100%. In this case, these things coming from the dictionary will be colored blue. Now, if we scroll down to see more words, eventually we'll see an area where the blue transitions into black. When this happens, these words, like currently appear, these misspellings aren't stored in our cheat sheet dictionary. These are just discovered as words that PolyAnalyst does not recognize. It doesn't know these words, so it assumes they are misspelled. When that happens, it has to find a word that it thinks that misspelling was trying to capture. So appeared should have two P's here. It needs to figure out the proper form of appeared. And it has an algorithm to do that. And that algorithm also produces a confidence, which is basically how sure PolyAnalyst is in that decision. And this confidence will go down as we scroll down, and eventually we'll hit a level where we cross over what's called a confidence threshold. And at this stage, the words will transition from black to gray. And so this threshold is 50% by default. And when we cross this threshold, when we're no longer above 50% confidence, PolyAnalyst will recognize that the word is unknown, probably misspelled, and will have a suggestion. But if we would like to apply these suggested corrections, these grayed out words will not be applied. PolyAnalyst does not have enough confidence in its decision to automatically apply these suggestions for you. And this confidence threshold by default is 50, but we can play with this and we can set it to be higher or lower. So you can do that above in this little section here. So if we want to be a little bit more conservative and say, all right, we only want to, well, we want to be very sure of these words. So let's bump this up to 75 level of confidence. So you can see a lot of these words have now been grayed out because of that change. So we can play with that if we'd like. Once we're happy with that confidence threshold, we see all these words ready to go. We need to apply these corrections, and we can do that in 3 ways. First, we can generate a replacements node. So we click this, we can name that if we want. I'm happy with that name. Let's leave and return to our sheet. So now we have a replacements node. And this is just a data set. It's going to contain all of the textual data that we had in our original set. Except this time in the summary column that we had, all of the misspelled words are corrected in this text. So we can't see those misspellings anymore because they've been corrected, and so now this text has been mutated by all these corrections. The second way we can do this, again, we go back to our spell check node. We can generate a replace terms node. We'll create a new node. It's coming out of the original data set, not the spell check node. And this is just a regular replace terms node like we've seen before. So under the properties of this node, we'll see that we're applying it to the summary column. And under the options, all of the different rules is just an exhaustive list of all the individual words that we saw. So we're just taking the word at the, replacing with at space the. And that's true for all of the words that we saw. We will likely have several hundred different rules in this node. So if you'd like to apply this node, we can just execute the node and it will apply everything to it, and we'll have the same form as the replacement. So why would you want to use replace terms versus just generating a data set directly from the spell check node? Well, replace terms, you have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more direct control. So we can go into here and we can uncheck a rule or slightly modify it, or we can export these rules to somebody else's project on a different server maybe. So this gives us a little bit more control if we need that. A third way of using spell check is to do a sort of secret or a hidden spell check. So that means is we're going to be generating a new node either through replacements or replace terms, but we're going to work directly off the spell check node. So say for example we want to use some queries that we'll talk about later. We want to look for some text. So for these things I'll use something like a taxonomy node, which we'll talk about later. Okay, and I want to search for every instance of the word separation as it's properly spelled. Well, we'll see here that we saw many different cases of the word separate, but they used an E instead of an A. Or here, they used an A and E in the end, and they misspelled it some way. So here's an example of, we want to look for the word separated, but they've obviously misspelled it in many different cases here. If we looked for the proper separated in the replacements node or the replace terms node, we'll be good to go because we've corrected all of those mistakes. If we work directly off the spell check node, the corrections will not be directly applied to the text. So if I opened up the text and looked at it, I would see the separated word in many cases was not corrected. I could still see the error. However, if I used a node like taxonomy or other nodes to look for the word separated, that mistakenly spelled version of separated would be correctly found by that query. What's going on is PolyAnalyst is creating a duplicate of the text and hiding it sort of under the hood, and it knows sort of the correct version of all these words. It will treat them as such when we look for them. So this is sort of a hidden spell check. Why would you want to do this? Well, sometimes we like to present the text as it is. If we're working in a legal setting, for example, or medical setting where we need to show people the text as it was when it was provided to us, but we still want to make these inferences based on correctly spelled words or knowing what the mistaken spelling was trying to convey, this could be useful. So those are the ways we can actually apply the spell check. All this has been very automated. Like I said, there are some manual approaches, but you'll have to tune in next time to see how we can fine-tune these results further with some manual work and using dictionaries. So stay tuned and see you next video for that.